Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Peru. And I hear most of you have parent-teacher conferences today, so thank you for making the time to come to this as well as that, because yeah, I'm aware how stressful those things can be sometimes. So I appreciate it. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about ways of incorporating literacy into real-world tasks, and by extension, how to incorporate real-world tasks into your weekly lessons with your EAL learners. So before we start, I would like to do a land acknowledgement, and I thank Peru for sending this along to me. We acknowledge that we are having this meeting in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This land is governed by the treaties of peace and friendship, first signed by the Mi'kmaq and the British Crown in 1726. We recognize that we are all treaty people and have responsibilities to each other and this land. It's important that we reflect on the actions that we as settlers must make to make reconciliation a reality. I also want to recognise the actions of African Nova Scotians in building community in Nova Scotia despite the systemic barriers they have faced and continue to face. We also must reflect on how we can break down the barriers to make an equitable society. So before we get to the agenda, just very, very quickly, a couple of things about me. So I've been teaching EAL for close to 14 years now. It started in England, where I'm from, and then I moved to Asia between Japan and South Korea for a few years. And then I moved to Canada and started off in academic English schools, so university bridging programs. We took a lot of essay writing classes and things like that. Got kind of burnt out with that side of teaching, so I shifted to settlement language by moving to ISANS. And ISANS is Immigration Services Association of Nova Scotia, and we serve permanent residents, we serve refugees, and we really focus on the settlement side of language. So the agenda for today, I'm just going to give you a very quick 30-second brief of what ISANS does. Then we're going to start to talk about young literacy learners and the strengths and challenges of them before arriving at real-world tasks and link, which is kind of the nub of what we teach. So we're going to go over real-world themes, how to develop real-world tasks, and then there's going to be a small discussion section at the end, along with any questions people have. So firstly, as I said, ISANS, Immigration Services Association of Nova Scotia. We are the leading deliverer of settlement services in Atlantic Canada. Our vision is a community where all can belong and grow. And our mission is helping immigrants build a future in Nova Scotia. So you can find us on Joe Howe Drive in the Manulife building, which is where I am at the moment. We also have offices in Mumford, and on Desmond Avenue as well. So we have lots and lots of language classes, lots of language clients, and as you can all imagine, as you all are as well, we are incredibly busy at the moment. A subsection of our clients are literacy clients. So our definition of a literacy client is, I'm sure, quite similar to what you have. It's interrupted schooling. It's backgrounds where they didn't necessarily have the opportunity to ever attend a class. And we have a number of programs that cater to them, not solely, although some of them are solely for them, but all of these programs, we have literacy clients in there. So we have our regular link programming. We have the literacy transition program. This is for newly landed immigrants who do qualify as literacy, and we just want to give them a bit of help before they join our regular literacy class. These could be clients who really have never, ever been in a classroom before. So we're just teaching them the basic skills, the basic etiquette around putting your hand up, about what a worksheet looks like and how to navigate it. We have the biliteracy class, which is our clients working with an English teacher as well as a teacher in their first language as well. We have a 55 plus class for adults who are over 55 who want more of a conversation class. We have outreach where we go into the homes of our clients, English in the workplace where we go into the workplaces of our clients. We have a mum and baby class where the mum is learning English while we have some early childhood educators looking after the babies at the same time. And the one I've highlighted here is our young adult literacy program, and this is the one which overlaps the most with what you do, because it's for clients who are over 16 years of age. We say it's 16 to 29 years of age. The majority of these clients tend to be between 16 and 21, though. So, strengths of the literacy learner, strengths of a young literacy newcomer. They have a wealth of life experience, as I'm sure you all know. We can often see them as the things they lack in terms of an academic foundation and an ability to thrive in a classroom. But what we forget sometimes is that they bring so much life experience to the class, the practical skills they have, because in their home countries, they would have had to use these practical skills to survive. Resilience and resourcefulness. It's easy to forget how much they had to navigate to actually get here to begin with, and how to end up in Canada. A lot of obstacles that required a lot of resilience and a lot of resourcefulness as well. And another thing with these learners, if they've never been exposed to education before, it's good to think of them as a bit of a blank canvas where they haven't necessarily picked up all these bad habits in the classroom, and we can teach them from scratch how to succeed in a class. But obviously, there are challenges as well. The big one I found when I was working with young literacy learners was they were very unfamiliar with classroom etiquette. These skills we get taught very, very early on in our educations, about putting your hand up when you want to speak, about not interrupting your classmates, about punctuality, how to store papers you're given, how to reference back to something you were given last week. These are all skills that we tend to take for granted, but with a lot of these young newcomers, they don't necessarily have them. Tied into that is a lack of learning strategies as well. Transferring skills between tasks, knowing how to ask for help, knowing how to refer to something else to help them with a work they're doing now. Undiagnosed learning disabilities. I'm not sure what it's like in the schools, but at iSANS at least, we have a lot of clients who we strongly suspect do have learning disabilities, but given their backgrounds, they were never given the chance to have those disabilities diagnosed, and therefore are not set up for success, because we're not sure exactly what we need to help them with, because they don't have a diagnosis. And unsettled family life and trauma as well. We see our students in the hours they're at school, but we're well aware what they're going home to isn't always the most structured home environment. And we're aware the places they've come from to get here have likely caused them a lot of trauma. And that's something that they're learning to live with every day. We've always got to be mindful of that, but it can be very challenging sometimes. So at iSANS, we teach LINK, and this is language instruction for newcomers to Canada. It's a free language program, so none of our clients pay to attend our schools. They're all largely federally funded. And we offer them English classes which are designed to help them integrate into Canadian society. And I think that's where the divergence between what we do and what you guys do is, because I know your focus has to be on the academic side, because you have an incredible amount of pressure from the outside to meet certain requirements, to meet certain grades, to get them into certain levels, which we don't necessarily have. We have it to a degree, but really our priority is giving them survival English to integrate into Canadian society and eventually be able to succeed here. So something we look at when we're starting to work with literacy learners is this cycle. And this is from a book called ESL for All. And I'll show you a picture of ESL for All later and give you a link of where to download the free PDF. But something it has in there is this cycle that begins with looking at a learner's culture, language, and prior experience and validating this as a starting point for their learning. So always coming back to what they already know, because it empowers them. It doesn't remind them of all the things they don't know within a school environment. It reminds them of the things they do know and can succeed at. And moving through this cycle, the one I want to pause at today is the third one. And it's introducing authentic, meaningful tasks to these students. Introducing tasks that they can actually use outside of the classroom and in their day-to-day life to survive, and often to help their families as well, because in many, many cases, they will be the only members of their families who have any level of English to use. So I'm always conscious of that. Even if they're 16 or 17, they might be the only people in their families who can speak English, and that brings with it a lot of pressure. So our focus is really on authentic, meaningful tasks. And we call these real world tasks, and I'm sure this is something you encounter in your teaching as well. So they're grounded in broader themes or communication, such as going to the doctors or shopping or banking or communicating with teachers. And they should reflect real life uses of language in situations that learners will find themselves in. They need to be relevant to the learners in class, be purposeful and specific, and involve language that can be transferred between contexts. And also, of course, we're teaching these things in a classroom, so they need to be simulated in the classroom environment as well. So just some very fast examples of real world tasks. One would be listening to a voicemail from an employer, which is not so relevant to your students. It'd be more listening to a voicemail from the school to inform them of snow day or something like that. Directions to get downtown, asking for help at a supermarket, reading instructions to assemble a piece of furniture, which is just a very simple thing, but even understanding the way instructions are presented to us with steps and following those steps and how images are normally connected to those steps. Writing an email to a teacher. So I'm sure you all receive emails or text messages from your students saying they can't come today, and just being able to do that in a way that is polite and is easy to understand is important. So I was listening to a podcast recently, and it was with Professor Carola Suarez-Ozoko, and she's the director of the Immigration Initiative at Harvard University. And she was asked a question about EAL learners in the school system in America, this is, but I think it's just as relevant to England and Canada. And this is the answer she gave. I'm just going to leave that there for a moment so people can read it. So she's talking about viewing students holistically rather than primarily through the lens of learning English. And it's difficult to do sometimes because as teachers, the success of what we do is often measured in how far our clients get with English, or students get with English, sorry. But it's remembering that there is a whole person in there and they have other needs and other things we need to pay attention to. their emotional needs, their cultural needs, their trauma-informed needs. These are all wrapped up in the package of what we need to think about when we're working with these students every day. Whereas, like I said, often we can kind of really get tied up in just thinking about the English side of it, which is a hugely important part. I mean, without the language, they're long term, they're not going to survive, but there are other sides to it as well that we need to get right before we just focus solely on the English. And real world tasks are a way of addressing this. So at ISANS, when we start to teach throughout the year, we have themes that run for between 1 month and 2 months throughout the year. And for those 2 months, we focus entirely on these things. So for our literacy classes, the themes are banking and shopping, education, employment, health and safety, recreation, and housing and community services. So the one I want to use as an example today is banking and shopping. So our banking and shopping theme is just finishing, actually. It ran from March until April, and we've actually had to pause it because we have a contract with Elections Canada, which says as soon as an election is called, we have all these real world materials related to elections that we have to start teaching our clients. So banking and shopping is paused at the moment for that, but it would have ran until the end of April if there hadn't have been an election called. So the first thing we do, and again, this is aimed at our literacy clients, so it's very, very simplified. So at the start of every theme, so banking and shopping, for example, we will do a needs assessment with our clients, and this needs assessment will involve checking their knowledge of the topic already. So what do they know about banking and shopping? With literacy classes, because they do have significant gaps with reading, we often do this using pictures rather than just words. So this is a really simplified version of that. We will show pictures of money, of prices, of banks, and talk to them about which element of this is most important to them. Being aware as well, we can include it all still, but what's the most important thing for them? What do they really need to know? Is it to have an understanding of what Canadian money looks like and the value of it? Is it understanding the prices when they go to Walmart? Or is it going to a bank and knowing what this plastic card does and what all the numbers mean and how to use it in the machine that spits out money? It's really kind of boiling things down to its simplest form and building up from there. So once our clients have selected once the clients have been given the theme we're going to be doing and have selected which element of that from the needs assessment they'd like to focus on, what I normally do is refer to the book ESL for All. So ESL for adult literacy learners. I don't know if this is something you have at your schools, but I really, really recommend it as a resource. It's a fantastic book. Most of our literacy program has been built around the advice of this book as well. You can download a free PDF of it online, and I'll send the link out to it afterwards. Or if you just Google ESL for All PDF, it will come up there. There is a free copy, and it's such a wonderful resource for us. It's the early part of the book is all an introduction to teaching literacy learners and working with them, their strengths and their challenges, the best methods for teaching them. And then it has a lot of activity examples as well. So when I was looking through it before this webinar, I knew I was going to be talking about banking and shopping. So I looked for any tasks they had for banking and shopping. And the good thing about it is it introduces the task and it introduces what the students need to do to complete the task. But it also has literacy skills to support this real life task. And that's really the key to what we're doing. We have all these tasks, we have all these subjects and these themes, but really they're to help them outside of the classroom, but they're also a canvas for us to teach these literacy skills on. So I'll just give you a minute to read some of the suggestions. So the first literacy skill it suggests is matching realia to photographs. So again, as you all know from working with literacy learners, you become very photo dependent, and often, especially if it's an animated photo, it's not the easiest thing for them to understand. So using a lot of real life objects, bringing in the fruit and vegetables that maybe you want to talk about and naming them that way. Use recall of word shape, word length, and letters to move a concrete object beside its printed name. So again, very simply understanding the alphabet and understand the letters that make up a word. Locating a specific type of fruit or vegetable in a market using a picture book as a reference. Finding the key word amongst a few others on a market sign. So lots of work with flyers, for example, to find the word tomato or tomato or whatever. And using proximity to associate a market sign's keyword with the vegetable being offered for sale. So every single page in the sample task list of the ASL for All book has tips like this. It gives you the task, and then it tells you which literacy skills can be practiced using this task. So using this, I'll go from, okay, we're teaching banking and shopping. Now I'm going to really flesh it out with some stuff from ESL for All and with some of my own ideas and our own in-house materials as well. We get into the classroom, and the first thing we always do before we get to any of the theme material is we have a routine. I find with literacy learners, having a routine at the start of the class is one of the most important things you can do. It gives them a nice early win. It shows them something they're very comfortable with and can do with ease before the class begins. And that just, I find, puts them in like a confident place before they start stuff they haven't encountered before. So some examples of routine topics you can do every day. Reviewing the alphabet is always a good one with low-level clients. A phonics review if you've got that far with them. Days and months, sight words, weather, small talk, zones of regulation, which I'll briefly mention in a moment. So this is for one of our instructors at iSans. They have this pinned to the wall as soon as their students walk into the classroom at any time. So they have jobs every day that they need to do. And after a while, the students are taught that the first thing they need to do on any given day is go up to this list to know what their job is for the day. The reason the font is different on every line is because, as you well know, on Word, the fonts all look quite different. So if we're teaching our clients, or sorry, I say clients, when I say clients, I mean students as well. It's just that sort of in-house lingo. When your students look at fonts on a Word document, it's always different between different ones. So the A might be that A or this A. So we try to expose them to lots of fonts as they go through the levels so they can actually understand them. So it's just things like someone has to write the date on the board, someone has to read the sight words from a list we have up, someone has to check the plants that we have in some of the classroom to make sure they've been watered, and some of them get a day off every day as well, which they like. I mentioned one of the pieces of the routine was zones of regulation. So this is something else we do as part of it. And it's just a way of finding out how they're feeling on any given day, because another byproduct of coming from traumatic backgrounds is sometimes emotionally they're having a rough day, but they don't necessarily have the language to express it. So we use something called a zone of regulation, where the shorthand way of a student saying they're not in a good place is they'll tell us they're having a red day. So they really associate the color red with having a bad day. We don't necessarily always know why, but it gives us a chance to just help them step away from the situation if they are having a red day. If they're all having a green day, that's fantastic. They're happy and calm and focused. So again, it's just an easy way to tap into their emotions that day, and it helps us know how to work with them. So we know we're doing the banking and shopping theme. We've taken some activities from the ESL for All book. We have accepted that this is a real world task because it's something they're going to need to use in the real world. And then we need something to anchor this all to. And what we tend to do, well, what most of our teachers tend to do is anchor this to a story. And it's stories we've developed in-house, very, very simple stories. We try to make it as locally specific as possible, so they're seeing places they recognize when they read through this. So this story, I'll just show you 2 pages on it. It was called Ali Goes Out, and the story is all about someone called Ali who lives on Quimple Road. They go to the bank, they use the ATM, they ask the bank teller for some help with something specific. They have to tell the bank teller their card number. All of these things we'd have to do if we went to a bank. And they're all in this, like I said, very, very simple story. Attached to the story, we have a package of worksheets that we work through. Oh, sorry, just a few more pieces of the story first. So as I said, it's just very simple sentences giving an example of what happens when someone goes to the bank. And as I'm sure you've guessed, the words in bold would be the vocabulary we're targeting for this theme as well. All stuff they'd hear at a bank, all stuff relevant to banking, and hopefully words they actually use in real life interactions with people at the bank. So from this, we flesh out and build lots of material that we hope will be relevant for these students. So flashcards for the vocabulary they're going to need to know. Focusing on money. So number literacy is really important, something that can get missed out a lot as well. So what you're seeing here would be a worksheet around adding 2 sums of money together. Obviously, that's not where we start. We would start with recognizing the numbers, recognizing them out of context, out of order, recognizing them on banknotes and what that signifies, and then eventually leading up to things where they can see 2 $5 notes, add them together and know how much it is. Back to the vocabulary, we have 1,000 ways to practice vocabulary. This is just one. It's for a class that's probably still focusing on letter formation. So they're copying the word, they're tracing the word. We're really checking the letter height to make sure all that's okay. We're categorizing the word into, okay, which has 1 syllable, which has 2, which has 3. And that's just in this activity. So there's 3 literacy skills in one activity, which is quite helpful. And we're also trying to make the worksheets as easy to understand as possible. So as I mentioned earlier, what we find with new students is they are very unfamiliar with how worksheets are set up. Something we're all incredibly familiar with. We know to look at the top for instructions, and we know that a line means you have to fill something out over it. All very, very familiar to us, but to our students, not so much. So firstly, we'd have taught them what the symbols at the top mean. So this is a listening activity and it's also a writing activity. So they instantly know that those are the two things they need to do. And we're as simple and as clear with instructions as possible. So listen to the words, how many syllables, copy. These are all things and all instructions they would have been taught before. We'd also do things like matching the money pictures to the money amounts, and also the Canadian cultural words applied to them, toonies and loonies and dimes and quarters. Then we would be a bit more advanced and on the sentence level for slightly higher levels, how to separate words, to teach them that words have to have spaces between them. And it goes without saying there's a lot of repetition with all this as well. We don't just do these worksheets one time, we do them multiple times. Also, once we kind of progress through the month, we'd start to look at slightly more difficult tasks, such as copying banking information, understanding which part of it goes on which line. We'd start looking at banking schedules as well. Very, very transferable skill, which they can use in most real world tasks pertaining to shops or opening times for places. And anchoring it back as well to vocabulary such as closed and open too. And again, the symbols are there. They know this is a reading activity. They know this is a writing activity. And it just helps to clarify what we're expecting them to do. Bank cards. So we'd be looking at what their bank card means, or more commonly with the age group of your clients, it would be what their parents' bank cards mean, because they will be the ones helping them at the bank to use these. So where the number goes, what that number means, if someone asks you for an expiry date, where you look. And this stuff takes a lot of repetition. They don't just get this once. It takes an incredible amount of repetition, revisiting it every day to make sure it does actually stick. And accepting the reality that it doesn't always stick, no matter how many times you teach it. But again, all very relevant to their real lives and real world tasks, but also all skills that you can use in the name of an EAL class to teach them literacy skills. And then any of these assessment tasks would be fine for this theme as well. So reading about the opening hours for a bank and answering questions about it, writing bank card details on a simple banking form would be fine. Listening to the price from a shopkeeper and giving them the correct money, or answering simple questions from a bank teller about your name or your address, or I would like to withdraw money. So target vocabulary and real world tasks and requests as well. So that's a very quick snapshot of what a real world task for us would look like, and how we would go from knowing that this is the theme to fleshing out the materials, creating a story to base it around, and then creating some simple worksheets as well, which look at the task and also the theme, and also has skills to improve their literacy as well. So what I'd like to do as a discussion topic now is just as a thought experiment, think about this topic. So you decide that housing and community services might be a good topic for your students. Obviously, the housing part of that is not so relevant because, I mean, hopefully none of your students are in charge of finding housing. It's a very bad state of affairs if they are, but hopefully they're not. So really it's the community services aspect we're focusing on. So let's say we have a theme that we're going to be delivering for the next month to 2 months with our students, and it's housing and community services. On our first day, like I said, we talk to our students about, what do you know about this theme? What is a community service? What is housing? We'd show some picture examples. And then we give them a needs assessment, and we would have boiled all of the many community services and housing related things into 3 or 4 or maybe 5 choices, because we don't want to overwhelm. And we say, okay, for the next 6 weeks, would you like to study about having a new home? Would you like to study food banks or taking the bus? And my guess for your students, given their age, they would probably select taking the bus. Because when I'm on the bus, I see a lot of students your age. So I assume most of them take the bus, and that's something, if they're a newcomer before they've actually learnt that, that's something they'd like to learn about so they can get around the city. So the discussion questions I have are the following. So I'm just going to give you 5 minutes to think about this, and you can either wait until the 5 minutes are up to talk about this if your microphone's working, or if it's not, as I know a few of you, it's not working, if you could just put some ideas into the chat. So the first question is kind of a holistic look at, okay, what's everything a high school literacy student who's just moved to Canada, what do they need to know about taking the bus? Then what could some assessment tasks be at the end of your theme for testing their knowledge on this? And then what skill building activities would you need to build them up to this? What kind of worksheets, what kind of stories would you need to tell them so they can build up to an assessment task? And how could these skill building activities also target some literacy gaps they might have? So I'll just give 4 or 5 minutes to think about this. I won't speak. And then after 4 or 5 minutes, we can have a quick discussion about it before we wrap up. So everyone that's left, if you were teaching one of your clients about taking the bus, what would they need to know about it for a start? And if this is a literacy client who can't necessarily read too well.
I had written down to look for the times, because they can certainly understand the numeracy, I would assume.
Yeah.
The routes, they can look at the map to see where they need to go. Price would be very important to see what's going to cost to get there. And then one that wasn't a literacy skill that I looked at was perhaps the etiquette of bus travel here in Canada could be different, so far as what they're allowed to take on and food and drinks and that sort of thing. Because if they actually do it, that would be very important.
Yeah, I completely agree. That last one, even for me, like it's a very lovely Nova Scotian thing of everyone yelling thanks to the bus driver here as they get off. It's really nice, but I wasn't something I'd done before. So even for me, and I speak the same language, there is completely different bus etiquette everywhere. And like you said, the other examples you gave as well, like within each of them, there's so many literacy skills we can teach on. Like, I mean, reading a bus schedule is there's so many elements to it that you need to kind of flesh out and pull apart. It's just this huge thing. Often reading words that go that way instead, because bus schedules often have that. So yeah, fantastic. There are some in the chat as well. One moment. So speaking of literacy, I am not Google Meets literate in the slightest. We use Teams here. So, okay. Astrid, they need to read schedules and fares. So the money, even things like teaching them how to use the app, so they know how to add more tickets to their Halifax Go app as well. Cultural knowledge, yeah. Do you need to wave at the bus driver so they will stop? It's something as simple as showing them a picture of the cord they have to pull on so they know to actually do that is, really important. Cost of a ride or coins they need. Yeah, exactly all of these things. And there's such a rich bank of material out there for something like this to create or actually find online. There's a huge amount we can use. My time is running out. So before I go, I did just want to quickly tell you about a summer program we run at ISANS. So something you'll be hearing about soon is the ISANS Youth Summer Program. This is a young adult summer program we run every summer. The eligibility is a little bit difficult for a lot of your students because it is 16 to 29 years old. So I know you don't have any in that 21 to 29 bracket, but you might have some 16, 17, 18-year-olds who would be interested. They have to be a newcomer to Nova Scotia, and they have to be a permanent resident as well. So it's a summer program. It's mainly language study, but we also do a lot of outings. So we'll explore Halifax together, and it's a way for them to learn English in an environment where they're not the only person who doesn't have the language skills. So they'll be with other students who are basically the same language level as them. We try to make it as fun and interactive as possible. It was really, really popular last summer. We had a lot of people come, some lovely friendships made off the back of it as well. And it was nice. Some of the feedback we got were clients, sorry, I keep saying clients, were students who told us that maybe at school they're a little bit lonely because it's hard to build these relationships when they don't have the language, but to find peers who were in similar situations with them, and then people they ended up becoming friends with when they went back to school as well, was really important. So I did just want to tell you about this. We will be sending out these posters, and Peru will be talking to the people who organize the language assessment testing for them to join these classes as well. So more information to come on this, but I did just want to put it on your radar that you'll be hearing about our summer program soon. And that is, I think, yeah, I agree, Astrid. I think there are more and more things going on in rural Nova Scotia, but yeah, we're still way off having the resources out there to properly serve these people, I think. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Are there any questions about that? I'm aware it was quite fast. No? Okay. Well, like I said, thanks very much for coming. I will be sending this presentation out to Peru to share with everyone. And like I said, you will be hearing more information about our youth summer camp shortly as well. So if you could spread the word to your students and encourage them to come, we would really appreciate it because I think there's a lot of value in it. Thanks, everyone.